This is session number 15 of the Sales Mastermind podcast. Today in the hot seat, we have Jack. Hit the music. Hello and welcome to the Sales Mastermind podcast. Get ready to harness the power of the Mastermind community and take your sales to the next level. I'm your host, Jonathan Stewart. Today's question comes from Jack. He asked, is the always be closing or A.B.C technique still effective in sales? Jack, this is a great question, and it is something that was popularized, the A.B.C technique, in the early 90s and has been pretty commonly used by sales coaches to help motivate their salespeople and keep them from being passive. The basic goal of this technique is to keep salespeople always looking for opportunities to close the sales throughout the sales process and to keep them from being shy of closing a sale. And really, in theory, it sounds pretty good if you just think about it on a surface level. It sounds good to always be closing, always be looking for an opportunity to sell, to close the deal. Because obviously, the goal of a salesperson is to close deals. But where it falls short is it creates a salesperson-centric process instead of a customer-centric process. If the sale and the whole goal of the sale is all about benefiting the salesperson, then the person who's buying or the customer will realize that they're not the center and they're not the one actually getting the better deal. I think it's important to keep a customer-centric sales process, and we'll talk about the sales process I recommend at the last tip. But here's what I want to start with first of all. So I would say, Jack, no, the A.B.C technique is not effective anymore. While the premise is good to always be looking to close deals, you have to think about the proper sales process, proper sales timing, and when to actually do it. So I want to just let you guys know what I think is wrong here with the A.B.C technique, and then I'll give you information about the sales process that I would use. So the first thing that I find wrong with the always be closing technique is that it promotes high pressure sales, which are way less effective in modern days. Now, people are overwhelmed daily and being constantly bombarded by ads and media no matter where they turn. Whether they are driving down the road and they see billboards, they're watching TV and they see ads, they're listening to the radio, and of course they hear ads. They're on the internet and they see banner ads, they see pop-ups. We have ads all around us all day, every day, and we kind of naturally tune those out. On top of that, there are more salespeople, it seems, than ever before. Everyone's trying to sell a product, and so everyone is always pushing a product. You might walk through the mall and you have people trying to sell you a product, and people are constantly trying to push products on people. People are overwhelmed, and they're tired of it. And so high-pressure sales techniques won't work like they used to. They naturally turn people off, and the people will shut down. And, this is what it comes down to. High-pressure sales may work sometimes. You might be able to close deals. But even if you do close a sale, that customer will likely feel like they've been taken advantage of, they've been pressured, and they will not buy from you again. This will not lead to repeat purchases. Obviously, you want repeat purchases. You want people to come back again and again and again because those are going to be your most loyal people. Those are the people that are going to buy more product, and they are also going to be the easiest to reach and sell to. You want repeat buyers, and high-pressure sales techniques do not lead to repeat buyers. This also, within this high-pressure technique, does not give it much attention to the discovery process in sales. I'm going to talk about the natural sales process in a little bit, like I've mentioned, and part of that process is to discover the needs of the customer. What do they really want? What's really important to them? But if you're always trying to sell and that's your focus, and you're always trying to close, I should say, and that's your focus, then you won't be paying attention to their needs. And so it's a very high-pressure method to always be closing. The second thing I see wrong with the always be closing technique is it ignores relationship selling, which is what I believe really leads to your repeat purchases. And I also say that is where the real wealth or the real good sales are created. So I like this quote, high pressure sales don't good relationships make. And you think about this, anything high pressure we automatically run away from. We naturally like to move away from stress, from high pressure. And so if you're a salesperson and you're trying to pressure people, they're going to naturally back away, get away from this situation. It's not going to be very effective. And also within this, since it doesn't make good relationships to have high-pressure sales and you're wanting repeat sales, repeat buyers are your most valuable asset. They require way less energy and way less money to sell to in the future. And so you want to make sure you nurture these relationships and you create trust. And essentially, this high-pressure, always-be-closing technique will destroy that trust. So for instance, let's say that you were using the A.B.C. method in a sales process. This is how a sales process might look, and this is very improper, and that I do not recommend this, but this is how it might look. You would come in, you would introduce your product to your customer, your potential customer. Then you might try kind of a soft close attempt to see if they are ready to buy. Then you might pitch, make the main pitch where you really lather it on and really talk about the benefits and why they should buy it. And then you maybe try some kind of closing technique. And if that doesn't get you anywhere, then you go back to the pitch and hit it all again. And then you do this over and over and over until you either close the sale or a person's so sick of you that they leave. Well, that's no way to sell a product. I don't think that's a good way, but that's just an example of ignoring relationship, ignoring the discovery process, and just always be closing. Not very effective. The third thing that I see wrong with the A.B.C. technique is that it ignores the differences between sales size and complexity. So not every sale is created equal. It's not going to be the same to sell a small $50 item as it is going to be to sell a $500,000 item. Obviously, it's not going to be as easy to sell a complex HR service to a big, large company compared to selling copy paper to a company. There's a big difference there, and they're going to require different sales processes, and they're going to require you to adapt. If you're always trying to close, whether it be a small sale or an easy sale, you might be able to get that on a small sale. You might be able to close and get a quick sale. But a large, complex sale cannot be closed until the right stage of the sales process. Trying to close a big, complex sale at the wrong time will make you appear inexperienced, and it's not going to work. It's just simply not going to work. A good salesperson naturally will adjust the sales process by the size and complexity of the sale. And so the always be closing technique can ignore these differences, especially since you're not discovering the real issues behind the sale. The fourth thing that I see wrong with the A.B.C. technique is that the best sales deals will not be closed with this sales A.B.C. method. I believe you can only close some of the low-hanging fruit with the A.B.C. method. If you really want to land the big accounts, the ones that are going to be the ones that really provide a lot of money for you and really are your best accounts, you can't use gimmicks and high-pressure techniques. Like I said, those may work for some one-off sales, and you might have some success in certain industries where you're just seeing people one time and doing that, but it's not going to be effective in the long term and in the long run, and especially not with bigger deals, bigger sales, and especially when you're working with a company that's going to be making repeat buys. Not going to work at all. You must be patient, do your proper preparation, questioning, educating them, problem solving with them before you can ever close a sale. So the A.B.C. method would not work in this way. The fifth thing that I see wrong with the A.B.C. method is that it ignores the natural sales process. The natural sales process that I want to let you guys know, and this is the sales process that I recommend and the sales process that I use and that I've created. It's called the natural sales process. I call it the natural sales process because this is the process that just naturally leads to the close. If you've created enough desire in the customer and you've done a good enough job selling the product and discovering their needs, asking the right questions, the sale will naturally close itself. You'll just simply get to the end. It'll be the natural conclusion of the sales process. You won't have to pressure, you won't have to push, but the customer will pretty much ask to buy the product if you've done it properly. Why I also call it the natural sales process is because this is similar to a process of starting a relationship. This is similar to a process for a lot of things in life. It's just a natural progression towards a natural end. And so this is the natural sales process that I recommend. The first part of the process, and this is a 5-step process, is the introduction. So this is the first time that you're introducing your product, and you go over the real basic product information. Maybe you introduce yourself. Then you want to build a little bit of curiosity. You can do that by maybe highlighting certain exciting things about the product or the service. You might also bring in a little bit of what other customers have said about it, just building a little bit of curiosity. Then you want to make sure that you establish a little bit of credibility so they know they can trust you. That would be all in the introduction stage. You want to lay a good foundation in the introduction so that way when you get to the second stage, which I called the discovery stage, that they will give you honest information. So in the discovery stage, it's going to be very important that you ask questions. Discover what their true desires, what their true needs are. Then it's important to go ahead and clarify those desires. So you might ask a question and get kind of a surface answer. But if you ask another question and get a clarification to that, you might find that there's actually a root cause for that surface answer, and then you'll really know how to approach it. So in the discovery stage, you want to ask questions, you want to clarify, and with these questions and this clarifying, you want to determine some solutions that could help you sell this product, actually how your product could solve their problems. The third step of the natural sales process is where you educate the customer. So you educate them on your product, on the process of buying the product, on what other people have, how other people have used the product, how they've been successful, and you build this education around some of the solutions that you determined in the discovery stage, or when what you figured out that was important to them. You give them a nice, educated reason to buy your product. The fourth step of the natural sales process is when you make the proposal. So this proposal starts, first of all, I believe the best way to start a proposal is to remove the risk. So you want to take a moment to let them know, this would be a great time to let your customer know, number one, of a satisfaction guarantee. If you have some kind of warranty, you want to let them know about a warranty. You'd want to let them know about a return policy if it's a product. You would want to let them know about previous customers' feedback, reviews that you have, testimonials, things like that. Anything that you could do to remove the perceived risk of buying your product, that's going to help you during the sale. You also want to answer any objections that they have. So you can start with answering maybe some of the common objections that people have. So maybe there's 4 or 5 objections that constantly come up, and you can basically answer those. You might even answer these in the education phase, but if you didn't cover it there, then you definitely want to cover that there. But also during this stage, this proposal stage, you can ask them if there are certain things that they still have questions about and that they still are wondering about that's keeping them from wanting to buy. And you can ask them, and then you can answer those objections. You also want to build in a little bit of urgency and scarcity during this proposal. Obviously, very honest, but you can do this by having some kind of limited sale. So maybe you have to do this by a certain time, or to get it installed, get your product installed by a certain date, you need to make a decision by this time. Or you could have some kind of bonus that comes if you buy at a certain time, or you could have a certain limited amount of product available. Whatever it be, you want to put a little bit of urgency in it, not high pressure, not gimmicky, but some kind of urgency, some kind of scarcity in there a little bit so that it pushes the person to make a decision on that product. That's all done in the proposal stage. If you've introduced the product right, if you've discovered their true needs, if you've educated them on why they should desire the product, if you've removed the risk in the proposal stage and answered their objections, built in a little bit of scarcity and urgency, then the 5th stage will be very easy, the close stage. It'll be what I call natural. That's why I call this a natural sales process. This is a very natural process through any kind of process, whether that be, like I mentioned, in relationships, but specifically here, we're relating it to sales, the natural sales process. So the always be closing technique ignores this natural sales process and is constantly trying to close at the wrong time before the customer is ready to make the purchase. The 6th reason and final reason that I believe the A.B.C. method doesn't work and that it's ineffective these days is because the A.B.C. method ignores creativity and instead relies on high-pressure gimmicks. So creativity is very fun and very cool thing to do in sales. Napoleon Hill, I constantly talk about him because he's kind of a classic when it comes to sales, marketing, self-help, things like that. But I've used this quote before, but he always said that the salesperson must also be a showman. He must actually be fun and engaging to watch and to listen to. And part of this is creativity. Being creative in the sales process, not doing the same things that everyone else is doing, not being boring, but putting a little excitement and a little flair and a little creativity into the sales process. I was on a sales forum and I found a really cool example of creativity in sales, and I thought I'd share this with you. This was from Ryan H. at salespractice.com, just a forum that I found, and he was a bank teller, and part of working at the bank, when you would sell a credit card or you'd sell a checking account, you could also sell them insurance. And so this insurance was threefold. You had three different options for insurance. You could do 1, 2, or 3 of them, your choice. The first one was if you paid $1 a month, then if you died, then whoever you chose as a beneficiary would get $8,000. So essentially this was an $8,000 life insurance policy for $1 a month. The other insurance option that you had was for $11 a month. If you had an accident that kept you from working, then you would receive the equivalent of your salary for a set period of time. And so for $11 a month, you could have that insurance. The third insurance option was for $4 a month, that if you had any kind of legal trouble, then they would cover any of the legal expenses related to that, basically like paying for a lawyer. And so the salesperson that we mentioned, Ryan, he was having some issues selling his product. And so he might occasionally sell one product here, one product there, but he had a great idea. And so this is what he did. This is how he got creative in the sales process. He took a sheet of paper and he drew a triangle on it. In this triangle, he separated this triangle into 3 separate sections. You have the top section and then the 2 bottom sections. So 3 separate sections. And so this is how he would present this insurance to the customer. He would go and ask them, what is the worst thing that could happen to you? And most customers would think about it pretty quickly and say, well, if I died, I guess that would be the worst thing that could happen to me. So what he'd do is at the base of the pyramid, he would write death. Then he'd say, what is the second worst thing that could happen to you? And after a little bit, maybe he'd get the customers to say, well, if I had a bad accident. And so on the second part of the pyramid, he would write accident. Then he would say, what's the third worst thing that could happen to you? And eventually they'd probably get them to mention maybe having really bad legal trouble, maybe being sued by someone. And he would say, yep, that's a good reason. So he would write legal trouble at the top of the pyramid. Then what he said is, what if you could be protected from all these troubles and never have to think about it again? Of course, the customer would say, well, of course, that would be great. And so what he would do is he would describe the benefits of each of these insurances. He'd go through and say, if you died, you could get X amount of dollars. If you had an accident, your salary would be covered. If you needed a lawyer, your legal expenses would be covered. And he would ask them, what do you think it would cost to have all these coverages for you per month? And the customer would throw out a dollar amount. So let's just say they said $30 a month. And so they would always, like he said, they would always overestimate the price. So that gave it a good starting point to be able to show them how much lower it really was. And so what he would do, though, is he'd try to make them think it was even higher than that. So he'd say, really? You think you can get all that for $30? And they'd come back and say, oh, okay, well, maybe I could get that all for $50 a month. And that would also really help him, because think about this again. This was only a $16 a month coverage for all this. And so the higher he can get them to think it is, when he says it's only $16, it's going to be very effective. So now he comes back and he says, now we're being a little more realistic. But then what he'd say is, if you could get this for only $30 a month, so he'd drop this back down to the smaller dollars amount, he would say, would you want this? And they would say, yeah, probably would want it. And then he says, well, great. Then I'm happy to tell you that you're going to be protected because the cost of this global protection is only $16 a month. And you know what happened? By presenting it this way, all three as a package, by getting the customer to recognize the real benefits of this product, by giving them education, by discovering what they thought was important. And by doing all this with this little bit of creativity, his sales increases on this insurance went up hundreds and hundreds of %. He sold almost every time, from what he said here on the forum, almost every time now he closes it with the insurance, simply because he was creative with it. And he did the proper sales and proper education. And notice how the sale closed very naturally. He didn't have to pressure them. It really wasn't a gimmick. He was being very honest throughout the whole time. And it was just natural. And people were happy with the product once they got it. And so that's what the natural sales process looks like, with a little bit of creativity. So I know that example was really helpful, and I thought I'd share it with you guys as well. So I hope you got a lot out of that. And I hope that you guys will try the natural sales process that I mentioned. This natural sales process, I think, is very effective because, like I said, it's natural. Once again, it's the introduction stage, the discovery stage, the education stage, the proposal stage, and then the closing of the sale. So I hope that really helped you guys. Instead of the always be closing technique, use the natural closing techniques that I mentioned, the natural sales process, and the sale will naturally close itself. Now, as always, I want to mention that the show notes for this podcast will be on the Sales Purpose website. If you go to salespurpose.com/session015, you'll find the show notes for everything that we mentioned, including the natural sales process. Also wanted to mention that I have a free course available called The 7 Secrets of Sales Success, and that'll be 7 great lessons to help you jumpstart your sales and increase your income. If you just go to salespurpose.com/academy, you can sign up for free and receive those 7 lessons. And the third thing I want to mention that I always mention to you guys, that this is the official podcast of the Sales Mastermind community on Facebook. And in that community, we'll also answer this question and let the community answer this question that we posed in the podcast. And it's a community of sales and marketing professionals that you can also speak with, that you can connect with, and that you can just spend a little time together and ask questions and really grow in your sales together. Well, I look forward to talking to you guys in the next podcast. And I always want to mention in closing that if you want your sales question answered, just simply email me at Jonathan, the letter S, Jonathan S, at salespurpose.com, or go to salespurpose.com/SM podcast. We'll talk to you next week. Thank you for listening to the Sales Mastermind podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes below for any resources or sites mentioned in the podcast. Also, be sure to subscribe and join the Facebook community to continue the conversation. Here's to your success.